An action regarding approval to reinstate field trip mileage fees for trips that go beyond 70 miles from the transportation office. Trips that go beyond this limit will be charged as determined by this discussion and resolution. Colonel Haddon, I was looking for you. I looked here.
Well, you know, I'm a little on the short side, sometimes kind of hard to find, so.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bullard and Coach Downey and board members. You know, last year we came up about $469,000 over budget for fuel, and I think, you know, from the transportation perspective, we're always way below, but obviously we didn't see fuel going from $2.68 a gallon at the beginning of the year, and it ended at $4.78 a gallon at the end. At the end of each school year, we always do kind of a hot wash. How can we do things better? And so when we got to this item, how can we look at trying to make a dent in that deficit for the following year? We have looked at our depot parking, make sure where our drivers parking at, which we're trying to make the routes a little bit shorter. That's already been done. Now we really need to look at reinstating these mileage fees. So let's kind of go, how did we get here? Remember, for the past 2 years, we were under a COVID policy where we didn't charge fees. Prior to that, for years and years and years, we gave elementary schools a $1,000 credit. Middle schools got a $2,000 credit. High schools got a $3,000 credit for mileage fees. So you do a field trip. The organization comes into the secretary or the bookkeeper, show them their field trip. They log it down. These secretaries, bookkeepers, they monitor that for the whole month. And then at the end of the month, 34 schools send it to transportation. At the end of the year, we have all these field trips. In this case, this year, it was 1,115 field trips. So you have all these field trips. You give the school the credit. I'll give an example. We'll use Halton. Halton has a $15,000 bill. They get a $3,000 credit. We charge for $12,000. It goes back to the principal. Now the principal has to decide, how do I give the $3,000 credit? Does athletics get this? Does band get this? Does ROTC? Who gets what? And so that's why we bill at the end of the year. I know athletics, especially like football, they would like to be billed right after the end of the season. But because of that policy, we had to wait. And so what we want to do is kind of implement an operational efficiency, reduce the amount of that fuel bill, and a process efficiency. How can we make it easier on the schools? And so what we would like to do is to offer this policy that says, as long as you're not going on the other side of Ruston, as long as you're not going above Texarkana, as long as you're not going on the other side of Longview to the west or Natchitoches to the south, everything is free. If you go outside that limit, and then you would be charged a mileage fee. This would mean the secretaries would not have to fool with 76% of the field trips that we did last year, only the 24%. And so that's where we're at today. Mr. Bullard, I'm going to turn it back over to you for your thoughts, sir.
Thank you, Colonel Haddon. Mr. Newman, I believe you had some thoughts and recommendations, and you and I we'll argue back and forth. We agree, but we disagree on one little tiny point. So the floor is yours, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually not on the committee, but been involved with transportation in years past. I think this is a fabulous idea. We do need to reinstate some type of cost reduction measure, you know, to recover costs for transportation, but we don't want to burden all of our groups, our extracurriculars and in-school groups with this. I fully support the 70-mile radius. I would like to see us give a credit to anything that's over that and outside of that 70-mile radius. For instance, if somebody travels 65 miles out and 65 miles back, that's 130 miles. They don't know a dime because it's in the 70-mile radius. Flip side of that, somebody travels 75 miles and it's 75 miles out, 75 miles back. Well, now it's 150 miles. One pays $0, the other pays about $125 in based on the calculation that Colonel Haddon has put forth. But
Pardon me, now it's on the table for us to
correct,
consider.
as presented.
Yes.
As presented. I would just like to see us give those groups that go beyond that 70-mile radius a credit towards that initial 70-mile radius. Simple as that. Just give them credit for those miles up to that instead of almost punishing them or trying to charge them for that initial 70 miles where we would give it to free to someone, to another party that didn't travel if they went 69 miles versus 71 miles. It's the difference of, having to pay versus not have to pay. And I just feel we could give a credit towards that total mileage amount and reduce what they have to pay.
For clarification, every trip would be credited for up to 70, or actually 140 miles, a round trip amount. So if your trip didn't exceed 140, you pay nothing. If it exceeds it, you exceed it, or you will pay based on only the mileage that exceeds the 140.
Correct. Correct.
Any other comments from any other committee members or board members? Yes, sir, Mr. Downey.
Colonel Haddon, I don't know if you've looked at it or not, but when you look at the football schedule, JV freshman, varsity, and then volleyball and cross country, and then we get into wrestling and basketball and volleyball and all the other things. So this policy, and Mr. Rowland may know or I'd be able to give an educated guess, this policy would actually eliminate a large percentage of those schedules, those scheduled games. And I'm just trying to recall from the past, most of those contests are going to be covered in that umbrella. And I'm thinking somewhere between 80 and 90% of the scheduled games will have no cost to them.
Well, Coach, we ran, again, 1,115 field trips where organizations requested a bus. This is not counting the 700 to 800 activities where athletic buses are being used around town, around the area, to Natchitoches, to Ruston. And so really the number of field trips that we're doing is probably closer to 1,900, possibly 2,000. Remember, high school has 14 athletic programs. They have freshman programs, JV programs, and varsity programs. And we have some programs in our middle schools too. That's not counting those. This is counting just field trips where someone requested a bus. Our activity fleet, our schools already have buses, doesn't count those. So, Coach, you're right. We're talking about paying for 269.
Your best guess is what percentage of those 2,000 are under 140 miles?
I can tell you exactly, it's 269.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry. 269 under.
Over.
269 exceed, 269 will fall outside this limit.
Say that, okay. That sounds about right.
Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I could add to what the normal Colonel is referencing, the 269, I would, in our discussions, the vast majority of those are going to be unannounced, unplanned, unbudgeted trips for playoffs, for whatever, things like that. If we're here at Airline, if Airline has to go play West Monroe in the playoffs, then girls volleyball playoffs, they got to go to West Monroe. That's, 225 miles round trip. They, in my opinion, should not be paying 75 cents a mile for all 225 miles. They should get an initial 140-mile credit and then only have to pay anything that exceeds that, like we're discussing.
Dean.
I just wanted, Mr. Newman, you're saying anything over 70 miles, we give them the 70 miles if they're going 80 miles, so they just pay for the 10 miles?
Yeah, that's what's in excess, as Mr. Bullard referenced, anything in excess of that, correct.
Yeah.
They'll have their total mileage, and you'll deduct 140 from it. And whatever that excess is. That's what they would be billed for. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion? And the motion would be to approve a policy change whereby field trips would be available up to 70 miles one way, or actually 140 miles round trip, and any mileage beyond the 140 would be assessed to the organization.
Eric, is that what you were saying?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Ms. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. Any other comment or question? If not, please vote by your raised hand. It is unanimous. Colonel, you are also our second item regarding the future bus purchases. And I want to thank you for that very informative email you sent. It was very eye-opening. I don't think any of us understood just how serious the bus market and the bus engine market, how constricted it has become.
It has, sir. Our dealers, International, Bluebird, Thomas Built, the industry that produces trucks, our vendors have already sold everything that they could sell for the 22-year and the 2023-year group. Our vendors are told they can't sell any more vehicles. And the reason is the third-party vendors can't produce enough parts to even go. Yes, sir.
Your volume was way down, and
Okay.
that statement, I think, it's very important. Everyone needs to hear what you said. So could you repeat about the availability?
Yes, so the availability of parts to cover the vehicles that are already sold for 2022 and 2023 are probably not available. And so what happened is they shut down the school bus assembly line, not the assembly line, sales for a while. It's now opened back up. And so the lead time to get a bus is 9 months. So if we order buses next month, we may get them on 1 July. If you recall, we typically order buses in the March timeframe. Last year, we ordered them in November. The order that we put in for November, we've received 7 of those buses. The 8th bus has not even hit the assembly line yet. And so what we'd like to do is come, yes, sir.
Do not have a start date?
We do. The start date is supposed to be August the 11th now, and we should get it hopefully in sometime in mid-September. And that doesn't just apply to buses. We did get some good news today. I was prepared to tell you that we have ordered, we need a couple of vans and another vehicle in other departments, and we haven't even been able to find these white fleet vehicles. And so I did hear today from Ms. Carey that at least we were able to put a purchase in. Is that right? Purchase? We did find 2 vans.
Well, we ordered them.
I take that back. They have accepted our order. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going to get them, but they have accepted it. And so vehicles are just hard to come by, very hard. So, but again, I'd like to come back to you next month and ask you about buying, or we'll have Ms. Carey come back and ask you if we can go ahead and put our order in. Right now, the state contracts were just dropped, but the vendors have some concerns about how they read about future price increases.
I understand you correctly. You're not requesting approval to initiate a purchase. You just want to make us aware of where we stand.
Yes, sir. Again, if I come next month, it's for a reason, not waiting until way off. We need to get this order in as fast as we can. And again, through the month of June, orders for school buses were closed. I would like to make one more point. You can see new school buses on the road. And if you've looked around, you can see new police cars. The industry has made a conscious effort to support emergency management vehicles and school buses over the private sector.
Thank you, sir. And I believe Ms. Bamberg is here. I assume you have had communication with her regarding budgeting for these buses that you're going to
Well, she knows I'm
recommend.
coming, she knows I'm coming to her, but I can't tell her how much I'm coming for, so.
We would like to assurance from her that we are properly budgeted to follow through on those purchases when you come back, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Colonel Haddon.
She gave her thumbs up.
Okay. That concludes our agenda. Are there any other items that any member of the committee or any board member wishes to bring up at this time? If not, thank you, and we'll have a short break before our next meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir.